Hello, everybody. It is that time of the week again. It is race week. And we are here today to talk all things Monaco Grand Prix qualifying. We're starting with the qualifying this weekend because Monaco it's the most important one, really. The race probably won't be as interesting as qualifying, so we're going to dive into that straight away. And then because we've had a few issues over the last few weeks, we haven't done videos for Imola or for Miami, so we are going to just do a little run through of those afterwards as well, just because we don't want to have missed anything out. So we'll just run through the races afterwards of those ones as well. So anyway, we're going to dive straight in to the Grand Prix qualifying for the Monaco Grand Prix tomorrow, and we're going to start going from the back of the grid. And we're going to go forwards because that's where the juicy end is. So we'll start with a less juicy bit. No surprise really, having watched anyone who's watched practice or the last few races really, to find that both of the kick Saubers are at the back of the grid. Guan Yu Zhou definitely seems to be struggling quite a lot this year. What are your thoughts on it, Bowser?
It hasn't been a great. I really don't think this track suits the Saubers, so that's going to be contributing a big factor. You know, Bottas's class at qualifying at the end of the day, and from his time with Mercedes, and he was only one place ahead. So I think it's inherent of the car that they're struggling this weekend. But yeah, Zhou's never really this whole season, from what we've seen, been on par with what Bottas can do. And you can see why there's rumours throughout the paddock that both of them are getting replaced. So
Yeah, so half a second in the end gap between Joe and Bottas, which when you consider Bottas didn't really take part in P3 after hitting a wall and damaging his wheel. Um, yeah, quite shocking for Joe there. Rumour is actually that he's still in talks with Haas though, which is an interesting one. I wouldn't have thought Haas would be that interested, but money talks, I suppose. Joe does bring a lot of sponsorship with him. Uh, Bottas is mostly rumoured to be talking to Williams at the moment, so potentially both of them gone this year. One of them definitely as much anyway, because Hulkenberg's in there from next year. So interesting to see what they do when they're fighting for their race seats tomorrow in a Grand Prix that is notoriously difficult to overtake. Then our first big shock of the session, Sergio Perez in P18. My exact words in our little group chat were, I bet he regrets turning down that Red Bull contract and playing hardball now. For those of you who don't know, apparently Red Bull offered him a 1 year contract and he tried to play hardball for a 2 year contract. Now you might end up with a no-year contract by the looks of that kind of result, if that is a sign of things to come. Yeah, absolute shocker. Obviously, Max hasn't been on it much this weekend either, but yeah, you can't. This is the problem that Red Bull have got at the moment. You've got one solid driver and one average driver. I know I'll probably get some hate for that, but you know, you need two drivers that can fight for things, and this is what happens when everyone else closes up and you've still got one driver that's miles off the other.
yeah, absolutely. It kind of shows you that when that Red Bull's working this season, and they're so far ahead, you can see why Perez, while I don't think inherently having a good season, was still able to get 3 second places in the first four, which kind of masked the issues, I think, a bit, and kind of convinced everyone, oh no, he is doing everything that he needs to do. You know, that's all Red Bull will need, just for him to come second behind Max and play the team game and maximise constructors, all of that stuff. It's races like this, and I think we'll see it again in Singapore unless they can sort their backsides out. You know, with such a gap between the two, and Perez, like I said, not driving overly well this year, not crazy well. This is where you'll find on the tracks where Red Bull aren't the most, you know, the highest, the quickest car on the grid and aren't sort of performing at their peak level that you'd come to expect from them. You know, Max is still fighting in Q3 and Perez is 18th with just the two absolutely awful kick Saubers behind him. Now, granted, I was watching, he had messy laps, but, you know, everyone's in the same boat at the end of the day. And yes, you can get lucky or not in this case, but, you know, there's still... Yeah, he's absolutely dropped the ball there. And I think this is arguably a better example of how his season's going now, and it's finally nice that everyone can see it, than the second places that he's had up to this point, which, like I said, have just been in a Red Bull that your nan's auntie's sister could have put second on the race. So yeah, it's a rough one, but yeah, he'll like you say, he'll be regretting not accepting that year contract and then just working on the second year that in the future. But yeah, he's in real trouble now. I think after that, and it's tomorrow for the race. It doesn't matter if you're driving a Red Bull or a Kicksab or anything. No one's getting past, or unless someone makes a horrific mistake or gets a penalty, or you can do something amazing in the pits, or it starts raining. That's
I've just looked just now, and there's no rain showing for tomorrow. So.
Yeah. So, he's going to struggle to make progress, which, that's... If he gets a point out this weekend, then I will eat my hat. Because, like I said...
if everyone crashes in front of him, that doesn't count.
If the race is like a standard race, nothing major happens, it's all kind of just sort of, strategy and, no rain, no crowd, big crashes or red flags or anything, there is absolutely no way he's getting points from 18th. Lewis couldn't do it in a dominant Mercedes when he qualified in a weird 8th or whatever. He couldn't get back up to the sort of front couple of rows. So yeah, Perez is not getting anywhere from that.
Yeah, agreed. And just to drive the point home, he was out qualified by our next man, which was Logan Sargent, who is himself having a mare of a season, but still put it higher than Sergio Perez on the grid. Yeah. I mean, we've spoken about Sargent enough times. It's got to the point where I'm not even hearing Williams defending and saying he's got a chance to be in there next year. It's pretty open that they're in talks with other drivers. So I do think this is Sargent's last season, unless, say, Haas, who have been rumoured to have talked to him, take him on. But, not great from him. But out-qualified Perez, so maybe he's feeling good about life.
Yeah, it's again, you've got another situation of one driver from a team's in Q3 and the other one's occupying the back 2 rows of the grid. So you've got to look internally at that point and say, I've really lost out compared to my team and what the heck is going on. So yeah, and I think it's more obvious with Sargent and Albon, but it's still 17th. It's not a shock compared to the previous one. To be fair, if anything, the shock from Sargent is that he's not at the back. But I think, like I said, those Saubers are so bad around Monaco, and like I said, that with Albon getting up in the Q3, if you look at Sargent, I think if your teammate's in the top 10, you've got to be aiming for. Bear in mind, people won't expect him to beat Albon because Albon is class. Everyone, we've said that multiple times. But you'd be hoping for top 12. I think if your teammate is in Q3, I think anywhere in the top 12 he would have been satisfied with, and I think we'd be saying not too bad actually, kind of thing. If any major things happen up front, could be points. But yeah, 17th when your teammate's in the top 10, 18th when your teammate's in the top 10. No, this particular row on the grid are going to be pretty come to start the grid tomorrow. But like I said, you never know. You never know what will happen.
Speaking of being upset where they are on the grid, next goes to Fernando Alonso in 16th. I would have bet money on Fernando Alonso making Q3. I'm glad I didn't. But absolute shocker. I do not understand what's going on. This is the second weekend in a row, or the second race weekend in a row now Alonso's had a mare. Is his age showing? Probably not. Something's going on. This isn't Fernando that we know. He's been beaten by Stroll twice now. Something's dodgy. He did say after the qualifying that they went out at the wrong time, but even so, he should know better. Take control,
Yeah, I don't think it's his age shown yet. I think that's
poor joke on my part. It wasn't.
Yeah. No, at the age that he is, it's a question that you got to ask. It's something that's going to be in the back of everyone's mind. You just had the balls to say it, sir. But no, I don't think it's that. I think it's just a bad session for him. And the reason why I defend him in that way is because in practice, right up until that point, he's actually been, pretty high up. Finishing third, I think, in one of the practice sessions. Now, I know obviously you can't read too much into practice because the Mercedes topped most of them, and that's a joke. So, it's although don't get me wrong, the Mercedes did quite a bit better today, but we'll get to that. But I think that's a bit of a anomaly that's gone in there. I don't think Alonso is 16th legit. I think that was a case.
In a row, he's had bad qualifying now.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on with it. It was in Imola because he's been classed at Imola, but I think it's more of a case of, like I said, today I just think he got caught out. I think it's pretty much the main issue there. So, but yeah, we'll hopefully. I have more faith in him manage to make up a few places in the race than the two slap behind him. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was Fernando, I'd be going for an early pit stop and trying to undercut as many people in front of me as possible. And if there's anyone who could probably pull it off, it'd probably be Fernando. Yeah, moving on. Anyway, up the grid, we're going to go to 15th place, and that is K-Mag. Now, I actually don't think this is bad for K-Mag. This is probably where I expected. K-Mag is on the cusp of going out in Q1, so yeah, a solid weekend for him. He made it through Q1 ahead of some big names, to be fair, in a time when he's fighting for his seat. So, maybe he's doing enough. I mean, if two of the names that have been linked to Haas are Joe and Sargent. He's ahead of both of them. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think we could really have expected much better than that for K-Mag this weekend.
No, especially with the teammate that is so well known for doing so well in quali, he's kind of always a bit on the back foot there. But yeah, he is going to be the first stop in the bottle for those bigger drivers, the three behind that we mentioned. The two behind shouldn't really classify Sargent as a big driver. No, the Alonso and Perez bottleneck that will be they'll have to get past K-Mag, and if people can't do that on a track that's 10 foot wide, then yeah, I don't think. Sorry, no, like 100 foot wide. Sorry. Then yeah, I don't think they're going to be doing it on the streets of Monaco without something crazy happening. So yeah, I think he'll be very frustrating for the likes of Alonso. Alonso's basically best chance is get him into turn one off the start. That is, I think Perez with 2 cars ahead of him has got no chance of getting K-Mag that early on. Alonso might be able to sneak past him in the first corner. In the sort of big concertina muddle. So, yeah, we'll see.
Taking advantage of the fact that K-Mag can't afford to get any more penalties, so he might be willing to take that risk against K-Mag, and K-Mag probably won't want to try and slam the door on him like he normally does. So,
yeah, no.
Probably a good chance for Alonso there to make him a place at the start. Then we move up to P14 anyway with Lance Stroll. What is going on with these Aston cars at the moment? Obviously, we don't expect much from Stroll, but he has outqualified Fernando. But the Astons just seem to just be absolutely nowhere this year compared to last year, and it's a bit of a shock, really. I mean, I know everyone's up to their game, but you'd expected Aston to have also upped their game, and it just seems like they've not, or they've either stayed still or they've gone backwards. So it's a bit of a weird one. But again, 14th, I think, for Stroll, I would say is actually a bit of a disappointment. I would expect him to be either in the top 10 or on the back end of the top 10. So yeah, being down 14th, I think it's a little bit disappointing. But Alonso's right down there with him, so maybe the car just does not perform around the circuit.
Yeah, you could look at it again. It could be another Red Bull situation where this track just really doesn't suit the car. And that's why they're struggling a bit more. But like I said, with Alonso, he was doing perfectly fine in practice, looked racy. So, yeah, I think Stroll will be disappointed. Bear in mind, obviously, qualifying is so important at Monaco. I think anyone outside the top 10 is going to be disappointed. But is it the biggest shock of the weekend? Absolutely not. So, we'll see what happens. He might be able to stay out of trouble, pick up a few places, and like you say, maybe the Astons can pull something off with strategy to try and lift both of their cars, jump some of them, or safety car or something like that might help them out. But Yeah, again, I think it's going to be a long weekend, well, long Sunday for Stroll. I don't think he'll go too far north of that, to be honest. So yeah, I think yeah, it's going to be more the cars. I think you're looking at 12th place upwards who are going to be really fighting for the points. I'd like to say 13th, the next guy, but I don't know. He's looked off the pace as well, so I'll let you introduce him.
Yeah, so 13th place is my boy Danny Rick. Bit of a disappointing weekend, and I don't like saying that about Danny, but throughout practice, P1 he was with Yuki, P2 he was off it again, P3 it looked a bit more hopeful, and then turned into Quali, and Yuki's made it through by almost a second, I think, at the time. I was looking at the times actually in front of me here. Let's have a little second. It wasn't quite a second in the end. I think Daniel did do a faster lap towards the end, so it's only 3 tenths, but still didn't make it through to Q3. I really had high hopes that he wasn't going to get through to Q3. Keep in mind that he's won this race before. He really should be a two-time winner, but Red Bull screwed over that pit stop that time. So yeah,
Nice to know you're over it.
I will never get over it. But yeah, I feel for Danny. Like, it can't be nice seeing your teammate constantly beating you at the moment, but he really needs to do something. Yeah, I want him to do well so much, and he's just struggling a little bit at the moment. So I really hope that this is a little drop back before he goes forward again in Canada. So we'll see. We'll have to hope there, but. Yeah, not a good weekend for him. I don't think the V-carb is going to give him the pace he needs to really move up many places either. I think it's going to be a pit stop overtakes only on this track, or unless there's some kind of crash. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see Daniel really moving further up from 13th. I think it's going to be defending from the faster cars coming from behind, unfortunately.
I mean, I've always seen Daniel as the last of late breakers, so I think if there is anybody that's going to be more willing to launch one at the very, very limited opportunities you get around this track, I think Daniel's probably got a better chance than most. My main concern would be someone, him firing one down the inside, like, a bit Charles of a few years ago, getting a couple that worked and then getting cocky and then firing another one and somebody just turning in and putting him in the wall. That'd be my fear. So I think Danny's going to try for it, but my fear is he might try one too many and end up losing the front wing end plate or maybe even worse. So that's kind of my prediction for Sunday for Danny. Don't get me wrong, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he goes flying up the grid, but
Oh, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that. I feel like where he's at the moment, with his confidence and things like that, I think he's stuck in a bit of a rut, and I think he's probably going to stay out of the points for sure. I don't see him getting into the points tomorrow, which is sad because I want him to. But
yeah,
no,
yeah, tend to agree. Yeah, but moving on to 12th place.
12th place, Nico Hulkenberg, just missing out on the top 10. You know what? I actually had high hopes with how qualifying started, and the Haas is looking quite punchy that Hulkenberg might be able to just squeeze into the top 10. Hasn't happened. He wasn't far off, to be fair, only about 2 tenths, but that's the way Formula 1 is nowadays. 2 tenths is everything. So
yeah, it was funny. It was a bit of a tease, to be fair, watching especially Q1, because the Hasses kept on jumping. Both of them, K-Mag as well, kept on jumping right to the top of the timings, and we were all kind of looking a bit like, oh my god, like maybe the Hasses have been hiding some hidden pace, but I think they were just doing the laps. Both of them were running on a different schedule, so they were either like one step ahead or behind of the main bulk of the pack, staying out of the trouble. And obviously as the track develops, then they jump to the top. But then next you give it a minute and you look back at it and they're like 14th, 15th again. So yeah, slightly misleading, but that is Monaco at the end of the day because it's such a massive track evolution that you see throughout the sessions. So yeah, no. Bear in mind, K-Mag in 15th. Hulkenberg, he's ticked the box, beating the teammate. That's the first job. He will be disappointed he's not in the top 10, especially bear in mind one of the cars that is, who we'll get to in just a moment. But I think 12th is one of those positions. I think 12th and 11th are in Monaco. Things happen at the front. You lose nose cones and bits and pieces, and whatever, people hitting the wall, having mechanicals even. And, they're in with a shout of the lower end of the points, I think, for those that have dramas in front. So, he's put himself in a relatively, without getting in the top 10, he's been one of the best positions to sort of capitalise on any errors that come through. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on him tomorrow and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to P11, your favourite Alpine driver, Esteban Ocon. Just narrowly missing out on the top 10, beaten by his teammate on his last lap. The last lap of Q2, his teammate knocked him out, which has got to be very upsetting for Ocon. They don't have the best of relationships at the best of times, I feel. So, all in all, though, for an Alpine, I think 11th place is cracking. I feel like this track is suiting their car a bit better because the heavier weight is not as big of a factor because there's not as many straights. So I feel like this is actually going to potentially be one of their better weekends of the year. So look out for that. As you mentioned with Hulkenberg, good chance of some points tomorrow if things go on ahead. So yeah, I think Alpine have got to be sat there looking pretty happy right now.
Yeah, I'd say so. Good old Esty Bestie, my old mate. Do you know what? I think with Gasly firing up to P5 at the end of Q2, he might have been looking at that and been a bit like, oh my god, kind of thing. Gasly's going to really outshine me here. But when, spoiler alert, Gasly finishes 10th, you're kind of a bit like, well, he's the 10th and 11th, so it's like, not quite so bad. But no, I mean, fair play to Gasly, but Ocon, again, like the season they're having, I think both of them will be, obviously Ocon would want to have beaten his teammate, but besides that, I think, it's probably the best they could have hoped for, if not probably a bit overshadowing where they thought they were going to be. So that's, like I said, good for them. They looked, relatively quick for the first time this season. And we'll see what happens. I think being side by side on the grids, there's no necessary that Ocon will definitely finish behind Gasly now. I think, he could fire it up the inside, and with those two's history, I think there's definitely...
If there's anyone going to crash into turn one, it's probably going to be those two, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to move on to Gasly now because I think this is a great weekend for Gasly so far. He's been struggling in the Alpine team, and he's actually gone, and when it mattered, he pulled out the lap he needed to pull out. And what was really impressive is that lap was like 5/10 faster than what he then achieved in Q3. So what on earth he was drinking that lap, he needs to go back and do it again, because his lap he actually did in Q3 wouldn't have got him into Q3. That's the kind of level difference we're talking there. His actual lap he did to get into Q2 would have got him P9. So what happened in Q3 to stop him from being able to replicate it, I don't know. Most of the time people get faster. Something's obviously changed, or maybe hit traffic or something. I don't know. But still, all rounds, you could just hear it in his voice, the relief, yes, let's do this kind of thing. Great for him. I really hope this gives him back the kind of gusto that I feel like he's lost a little bit because of how bad the car's been. I think he's had his head down. So hopefully this brings us brings us back to Pierre Gasly that we knew at AlphaTauri, who we were ranting and raving about, and then he's done nothing since he went there, really. So hopefully we get classic Gasly back. Have a good race tomorrow. I think there's points on offer if they don't take each other out into turn one. If I'm Alpine team boss right now, I'm going, you're staying in the exact same positions going into turn one. Your whole job is to stop anyone else passing both of you. That would be my whole thing. It's Ocon and Gasly. We know they've got history. I would not be surprised, especially with how Esteban Ocon is, if he tries to send it and takes them both out of the race. That's my thoughts, especially with the way Ocon has already been rumoured to be talking to other teams. I can definitely see it being something that'll happen, but we shall see. Thoughts on Pierre Gasly?
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much covered it there. And like I said, I've been very critical this year of him, especially compared to Ocon, because frankly, I think Ocon's been driving not just a bit better, quite a lot better than him all season, to be completely honest.
I just want to jump in there. Out of interest, before this season, who do you think was a better driver?
I would have probably said Gasly, to be honest, before this
Exactly what
season.
my thinking was as well. Yeah, you can continue. I just had that thought, and I was like, I just want to see what he says.
I mean, I never thought there was much in it, if I'm completely honest. I mean, you've got two different angles. You've got Ocon in the Mercedes camp. You've got Gasly was going up the Red Bull chain. But yeah, you always had that thing of the fact that Gasly actually made it to Red Bull, although briefly. You always had that kind of feeling that, you know, there must be something inherently quicker there. The fact that Ocon never made it to the Merc team. However, you know, this season, I haven't thought that at all. You know, like I said, I think Ocon's been surprisingly good. Whether he's just better dealing with slower cars, I don't know. But yeah, and Gasly, they've both got wins, so you can't really say one of them's won and one hasn't. But yeah, I think. Yeah, there's really, I'll still argue there's very little between them either, anyway. And I don't think there's really that much between anyone on the grid, if I'm completely honest, minus maybe Sargent. Which I know sounds harsh, but you can't really compare Logan Sargent to like the Alonso's and Verstappen's and Hamilton's.
Well, we might be able to compare him to Alonso tomorrow.
Yes, but I really don't think there's a lot between the two Frenchmen. But I think Ocon's been doing a better job this season. However, you know, I'm happy to be proven wrong or happy to give praise when it's deserved, and that was possibly one of the best laps of the weekend from Gasly in Q2. You know, that was an astonishing lap. So, you know, absolutely class. He managed to find, you know, you look at almost a whole second from Q3 to Q2. Granted, he didn't quite get it in Q3, but that might be because I'm not 100% sure here, but maybe he used all of his. Yeah, I think maybe, you know, or maybe he had one set left that then got blocked, or, you know, not an ideal lap on his last set of fresh softs.
But drivers that had a lock up and had to use a second pair, maybe. I know there's a few drivers that had to do that.
Possibly, I wouldn't want to say for certain, but like I said, either way, I mean, for an Alpine to get in Q3 this season has been, you know, what any of them would have dreamed of, and yeah, to be like I said, to be 10th and 11th, I think they'll be very, very satisfied tonight. And, you know, there's good points on offer. If, like I said, if the Ferraris and the McLarens and, you know, Mercedes have any issues tomorrow, you know, you're looking at some actual real decent points for Alpine if something like that happens, or they're at that really nice point in the grid. If they can stay out of trouble in turn one, if it does on the off chance start raining or they get a red flag, they could be right in that window of being able to really like benefit from, you know, going a bit longer and then getting a free stop under a red or anything like that. You know, they'd be ideal in that kind of spot. If one of the others ahead of them have like stopped early to try and jump another or something like that, and then the red flag comes out. So, you know, they're in a really, really tasty spot for some really good points. And, you know, once they've got track position and all the stops are out of the way, you know, good luck passing them, because both of them can defend really well. We know that. So, especially around Monaco. So, yeah. Yeah, could be interesting for Alpine tomorrow. Keep your eyes on them.
There we go. Okay, moving into number 9, Alex Albon. Fantastic weekend. You know, Williams haven't broken the top 10 all year, so it's absolutely brilliant that they've been able to do it this time. Albon just showing once again what skill he's got to do so. Yeah, I can't really say much more. He's done an absolutely fantastic job.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because they spoke to James Vowles at the in the gap between Q2 and Q3, and he was very open. He was like, "Look, we're going to do a used tyre run, and we're going to do a use our fresh softs as the last run." But he even said to the guys then, he's like, "But we're going to go and take the gap between the two runs of everyone else to use our soft tyres, and, you know, maximize rather than, you know, give Albon the best chance of running a clean lap rather than necessarily the ideal conditions right at the end of the session." He says he'd rather take that. And it's paid off because, you know, every position counts in Monaco, and he's managed to stay ahead of Gasly with that lap. You know, it was really, you know, for Williams to get in, you know, into the 1 minute 10s is, I wouldn't have said they'd be anywhere near that. And I know, like, obviously there was a lot of development, but the Sargent on a 112.0 and Albon in the 110s is amazing job with Albon. Can't fault his weekend. So he's been absolutely spot on, and hopefully some, again, like, using track position, staying solid there and defending, and picking up any issues from those above. It could be on even, could be some crazy points here for Williams, which would be amazing.
Yeah, hopefully a good weekend for them. Alex Albon, one of my favourite drivers, so hopefully he has a cracking weekend. I'll be well up for that, and James Vowles will be a happy boy if that happens as well. It would be nice to see Williams get a few more points on the board, because it's weird seeing them right back at the back again, which is strange when you think about it, because there wasn't that long ago they were there originally. But we've got kind of used to Albon just picking up points here or there in the other season. So it would be nice for them to get back up there again and start that process.
Yeah. Check 1 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. That's a bit better. Okay. Sorry. For those
No,
of you,
no.
I just messaged Bowser saying I could start to hear myself through the screen. I didn't want everyone there at home hearing me twice. Moving on to P8 and Yuki Tsunoda. Cracking weekend again for Tsunoda. How many times do we have to say this now? Like, I'm a massive Danny Rick fan. I want Tsunoda to do bad because I want Danny to do well. But he's every weekend just shows up, knocks it out the park at the moment, and he's doing everything he needs to do, and someone needs to pick this boy up, because if Red Bull aren't going to give him a seat, then someone needs to, because he's just going to waste his talent in that V carb. I think he's at his pinnacle, or almost at his pinnacle at the moment. So this is the time to take Yuki. If you're another team and you want him to take a risk, this is the time to do it. He needs to have an opportunity to show what he can do in a more competitive car, because what he's doing in that V carb, I think, is outdriving it at the moment. So yeah, he's doing fantastic. Can't praise him enough.
Yeah, it was a great session for him. He looked on the pace throughout the entire time. So yeah, he's, like I said, making a good shot window for himself. And we'll see what happens with the race again. I do worry he's one of the more aggressive drivers out there. So I do worry that when I was saying before with the others, if anything happens on front, they might be able to pick up the points. I do worry that maybe Yuki might be the cause of one of those. But at the end of the day, he's put himself in the best position at the moment for it, and fingers crossed he can keep it all together, and he can, like I said, have a great race on Sunday, and like I said, pick up some good points for V Cup and help move them away from some of their competitors towards the back end of the grid. Yeah,
absolutely. That moves us then on to Lewis Hamilton in P7. Disappointing, in my opinion. Started the weekend strong. He was P1 in practice 1, he was P2 in practice 2, and then they just seemed to disappear. Don't really know what happened, but I was watching this, I was like, oh, hang on, is Lewis going to come out with a win here? This is gonna make my boy Bowser happy, and then he's not delivered for you, I'm afraid, buddy. Don't know what happened there. Russell again out qualifying him. I don't actually know what the qualifying head-to-head is, but I'm pretty sure Russell is quite convincingly beating Lewis at this stage.
It was 6-1, so it'll be 7-1 now.
Yeah, so I mean, don't really know what's going on with Lewis, whether or not he's just dialed it back because he knows he's going to Ferrari next year. I hope that's the case, and that he's not just, this is Lewis now. Like, I don't think he's just suddenly dropped off like this. I do think he's just maybe taken his foot off the gas a little bit. He's not taking those extra risks that he would have took when he was fighting for a championship and things like that. I think we'll have a different Lewis at Ferrari, but we'll have to wait and see for that. But for now, he's P7, and I think it's disappointing.
I'd just like to go back to a point earlier, you just reminded me with the head-to-head. The Astons are actually on 4-4 for this season now.
It's mental.
Just thought I'd throw that in. I remember hearing that on commentary, and I was like, I just forgotten completely up to that point. So yeah.
Doing Lance Stroll a letter of apology at this
point. Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that one. But yeah, back to Lewis. I've stopped getting my hopes up too much this season, especially because he'll seem to, the Mercs in general will seem to throw a crazy practice session together that puts them right up at the top, to tease you into thinking they're back. But all I can say is the car did actually look a lot more stable and drivable from the laps that I saw, which is, bodes well for the updates that they're bringing. So that's a positive to take from it. Lewis was right up until Q2, was looking really, really quick in comparison to George. I think he's looked more comfortable all weekend. One thing I think George has not had enough credit for because of the pace of the car this season. When it really matters, George has absolutely turned it on this season when it comes, Lewis is by a long, long way the most successful qualifier in the history of the sport. And not even close to anyone else. Like, so far ahead of everyone else. And, like I said, 7-1 now this season for George. In exactly the same machinery. Even for someone that good to have switched off and heads in the next season with the new team and everything, that's still an absolutely ridiculous stat. So,
and I
again...
feel bad for George, because he doesn't get the credit for it that he would have if that Mercedes was still at the front of the grid.
Yeah, if that Mercedes was still the dominant car of the season, George would be leading this world championship by a country mile, like way more than Max has, in recent years, because partly down to his qualifying has been absolutely insane this year. So, like I said, I feel so bad for George. He worked so hard to get in that top team, and that car has been garbage basically compared to. I'm saying it's like back of the grid. That's a bit harsh, but compared to where they were in their so dominant era, the car that they've given since George joined, has been nowhere compared to where they were, and I do feel so bad for him. I think he's handled it really well as well. He hasn't turned around and got stroppy and blamed the team very often. He's tried to keep his head down and wait for his opportunity, and I think that car is getting better, especially this season, from where it started to where it is now. Going back to Hamilton specifically at this particular moment, I think we'd be really disappointed with 7th. I think Mercedes would have been looking to be fighting with, for the front 2 rows, 3rd row maybe. But he's hasn't made it, so he'll be disappointed. Especially with a super aggressive guy starting next to him or just one place ahead of him on the grid. I don't think he'll be. It could be. I mean, it's Verstappen. Realistically, maybe Lewis is in a position where he's got nothing to lose from this season, where Max has got everything to lose. Maybe you might see him play the Uno reverse card from 2021. Who knows? We don't know, but I'd like to see it. That'd be fun. But
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think he's going to have a good enough start.
Lewis is just going to throw it up the inside of
that Red Bull's been lightning off the grids this season, so I can't see it
happening. More likely, Verstappen's going to do it to Russell.
P6,
which is Max Verstappen, and we've got to say, this is the first time I can say it, and I'm really excited to. Disappointing from Max. Wow, I never thought I'd get to say that this year. Shocker. Red Bull was absolutely nowhere. He P6. I can't remember.
And hit the wall on his last run.
Yeah, hit the wall. That was an error of his own making as well. Like, it wasn't forced into it or anything like that. Yeah, maybe signs of some cracking going on there at the Red Bull team. It'll be interesting to see how this all continues, especially with like Adrian Newey moving and all the other stuff that's been going on. I haven't heard anything more about all that stuff, so I wonder if it actually is still going on or not. But interesting times and very exciting to see Max in P6. And wouldn't it be lovely if he was never on the front row again this season? That'd just be wonderful. But that's dreaming. I know he'll bounce back next week and he'll be pole by 2 seconds in Canada. But very disappointing weekend for him. To be honest with you, with Max at the moment, I think anything other than first or second is disappointing. So, not much more to say.
Yeah, this will be the last place he wanted to not be on the front row of the grid as well, because with that car, 6th place, I think in any other race would still be having him down as the likely winner. At this one, we might see the old ultra aggressive Max again. But again, like I said, with the Hamilton situation, he's got a lot more to lose than anyone else. being, top of the drivers'
It
championship.
seems frustrating as well. Drivers, when they're frustrated, make mistakes. It could very much be that he's the one that actually causes a crash or something. So
Possibly. I think at the end of the day, I don't know. It could go either way. Depends where his headspace is, I think, in the morning. I think, depending on... He seems very chill this year. Like, even more so than I've ever seen him before. Like, a kind of blasé kind of look
radio
about it.
messages weren't very chill.
No, I think to be fair, the Red Bull as a car, as obviously you can see from where Perez qualified, I do think Perez made some his own mistakes in there as well. So don't get me wrong, I'm not letting Perez off the hook, but that obviously Red Bull, I think, is having one of its races. It's like Singapore last year, where just just doesn't fit with the ethos of the track. It's not really. They managed to kind of mask over it enough and still get a good result in Monaco last year. But, I think it's come a lot more to roost, and I think the pack, especially McLaren, are pushing them a lot harder this year. And, obviously Ferrari. But the fact that McLaren's joined the party, that means that when they have a slightly off race, last year that was, oh, well, maybe Charles will just get ahead, or Charles and Sainz might just get ahead, but Max would have still been third. Where this season, because it's that much closer, he's down to 6th.
Yeah,
and he's got...
again shows, like, you've got two teams there, you've mentioned Ferrari and McLaren, that have got two drivers that are very close together. And then you go to Red Bull and you've got two drivers that are very far apart. I think that, Max has got no backup, is the issue at the moment. And he needs...
Not at the minute, no.
This situation here is exactly why.
Yeah, I mean, with Max hitting the wall in his last run, right? A rare mistake, but, everyone's human in this, so fair play. But this is the kind of time that I've said it a couple of podcasts ago. This is the time where having a really solid second driver, when Max hits the wall in a scenario like this, that's when it was Perez's opportunity to take pole or the front row or something like that, and still make sure that the team did well this season, and still bagged good points. I don't get me wrong, I'm not going to suggest that Red Bull are going to really be struggling to get the constructors again this year, but if they have a Brawn-like season and start falling away and don't manage to keep up with the development of others, maybe they've already started turning their attentions to next year, or maybe even 2026, I don't know. But if they don't move on with the car and everybody else keeps catching them up, then they might find that they're off the season.
Yeah,
and they have been in the past.
Just cut out at the end there, but yeah, I can see exactly what you mean with the Braun kind of season drop off. It could be what's happening. We don't actually know with Adrian Newey leaving if he's actually going to still be working on the car for the rest of the year. So it could be that there's no more Adrian Newey going into this car, and is it just going to get progressively worse so they can't find anyone that can live up to his standards? We shall find out. Anyway, let's move on. So P5, we've got George Russell. Kind of already covered it mostly of Lewis. Cracking weekend again for George. I was really hopeful again the Merc would be fighting for the top spot, having looked at the earlier practice sessions. But you know what? P5 behind the Ferraris and McLaren's ahead of Max Verstappen, I think is pretty solid weekend still nonetheless. So I think he can be happy with that, and so can Mercedes, to be honest with
you. Yeah, no, like I said, we kind of covered it already, but solid effort from George. Like I said, he's put in whatever issues Hamilton's having, he's managed to work around them better, helping now properly develop that car as well. They've got more updates coming. They've got an update package on at the moment. It's fresh from Monaco. There's another one reported for within the next 2 races as well. So hopefully that car will just get inherently quicker and quicker and quicker, which is great for us Merc fans. And fingers crossed, George will, and Lewis, but George will be there to, like I said, continue his form, continue that sort of good drive straight out, and sort of just keep on picking up places and stuff. So and maybe put some pressure back on, your Red Bulls, your McLarens, and your Ferraris, who seem to be the top 3. An established top 3 for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to think that only that car's going to get more and more towards George as the year goes on, because it's going to they're going to be tailoring it towards him instead of Lewis for next year. So, moving on, P4 Lando Norris. I think he's going to be disappointed with that. Behind his teammate, he's only just recently won a Grand Prix in Miami. So, yeah, I think as a whole, P4 Lando Norris, I think, will have expected himself to be higher. I think he was hoping for top 3. But as in general, I think McLaren are going to be happy with that. I just think they'd be happier if that was Piastri and not Norris. What do you think?
Um, from McLaren's point of view, I think they'll just be happy with, if someone had said they get second and fourth, I think they would have bitten your arm off for it and be, pretty happy with that. They probably would have assumed P1 would have been Verstappen, and they probably would have assumed that P2 would have been Norris and Oscar fourth. But as a team, I don't think McLaren will care which way around it is. I think, to be completely honest, the points and where they're at is what it is. As long as they're pulling in the points for constructors, I don't think they'll care which way around it is. They're both drivers, if it stays where it is, are gaining points back on Max and massively on Red Bull. So that's a massive bonus for them. And obviously their fights with Ferrari, I think, at the moment, and probably for the rest of the season, for second in the constructors. But they've got one car ahead of Sainz as well, so that's a bonus. For Norris specifically, I agree. I think he'll be disappointed, but I think everyone's disappointed if you can't beat your teammate. So I think that's where that inherently will lie. But I think he wouldn't have been massively disappointed with fourth place. Bear in mind they have had a little bit of an up and downy kind of season, but like I said, established now as in the top 3 best teams. I think there's not like consistently the third best team, because sometimes I think they do look that much quicker than Ferrari. So, but yeah, this track I think obviously suits that Ferrari car really well. And Norris will. I think the main thing for Norris will be disappointed he hasn't beaten Oscar, but I think he would have been perfectly happy if he was third and Oscar was fourth, for example. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. But yeah, he's got to try and do something tomorrow and really pull it back and make the most of. Fourth on the grid's good. I mean, I don't think anyone would be really massively disappointed with that, unless you're Max Verstappen. I think he probably would have still been disappointed with fourth.
Yeah, he's lining up alongside his best buddy Carlos Sainz, so we'll see if they're still buddies come the end of the first corner. Yeah, good weekend I think for Sainz. I don't think he can really expect Sainz to be higher than third, but I think that's solid. He's doing what he needs to do to kind of advertise himself, so someone needs to pick up Sainz. Like, everyone was saying this about Perez when he was losing his seat, but I actually think Sainz is a much better driver than Perez, and it's shocking that he's not already in that Red Bull seat for next year, in my opinion. Merck apparently have closed the door on him and told him that there's no seat there, which surprises me, because again, I think that could have been a good seat for him. So from what the rumours are, it seems to be down to Audi and Williams for him, which is a shame. I mean, it'd be great for Williams if they get him, or Audi. It'd be great snatch, but I just think he's so talented that he should be a better team. But overall, I think Ferrari and him are going to be very happy with a third place this weekend.
Yeah, Sainz is. Yeah, I've been really impressed with them all season, to be honest. I think Leclerc seems to be really, really good around Monaco. This is third pole now, so I don't think Sainz. And I think you could see from the interview that they had for the podium positions for Quali that I don't think Sainz was ever really expecting to beat Charles around here. But third solid. Like you say, great advertisement. I believe that part of the reason why Mercedes shut the door was because they were only willing to offer him a 1-year contract, obviously with the view of, I'm guessing, taking Antonelli there, or at least not closing that door off, and Sainz wants a multiple-year contract. So, similar-ish to Perez's situation we mentioned. So, like I said, I'm absolutely shocked that they haven't, with him being available, why is he not taking Perez's seat at Red Bull? It's bonkers, absolutely mad.
The only thing I can think of is that their Red Bull sat there like, well, we can't risk throwing Perez out now in case Max does leave us, kind of thing. We need him then there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think Mercedes' only thing is joins. That's the only driver I think that Mercedes would offer a multi-year contract to at the moment. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But realistically, I can't see, unless Mercedes have a real turn up second half of the season, I can't imagine Max going. If I'm completely honest, I think he'll stick around with whatever's the best car. I've heard an opinion from Anthony Davidson, who said that, that Red Bull's still going to be quick next year because it's just inherently the same cars. So Max will stay with Red Bull with the best chance of winning what will be his 5th World Championship. We assume from that point, the fact that if he carries on this season as he's doing, Max will take the best opportunity to win his 5th, and then once he's done that, he will take, for 2026, he reckons he'll take a year out. Which he has said that he wants to do things like the 24-hour Le Mans and other bits and pieces in motorsport. And then, obviously, let everybody else work out the new engine regs and see which team rises to the top, and then basically drive for whoever's doing the best at that point. Because he's such a, be a 5-time world champion by that point, that anybody will be willing to take him. So that'd be interesting if that comes true. You can have a year out, just let everybody else do their thing, and see who rises to the top. But
yeah, exactly.
Not sure on that one.
Interesting.
But yeah,
back.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think back to science. Realistically, I think he's maximised where he could have been. Yes, Leclerc's on pole, so yeah, he might be a little bit disappointed he's not second, but I think where he's been throughout the weekend so far, I think 3rd place is and being ahead of Max as well is a great result. So I think he'll take that and hope to get Oscar at the start, I guess, pretty early on, and then hold a Ferrari 1-2. I think it will be the plan.
Yeah, and then moving on to P2, as you just mentioned there, Oscar Piastri. I think he's got to be extremely happy with that. Trading blows with Charles Leclerc at the end there. I think if you took his first run and his last run and mashed them together, took the first half of it and the second half of it, put together, he would have beaten Charles. But, you've got to do it over one lap. That's what it's all about. And, yeah, I think he's got to be absolutely chuffed with that. Front row of the grid for Monaco Grand Prix. It can't get better than that, Is he just going to throw it up the inside of Charles into Turn 1, knowing Charles is going to be worried about crashing out at his home Grand Prix? I don't know. He could do. Depends how brave he's feeling, because he could also equally crash out of the Grand Prix and throw away a potential Monaco 2nd place. So, it's going to be very interesting off the line tomorrow, I think. We'll see what happens into Turn 1. There's not normally much of a chance for a run, but we'll see. But no, overall, Oscar Piastri, I've been impressed with him ever since he came into the sport. He's had a bit of a slower start this season, but he does definitely seem to be ramping up again since McLaren brought in these upgrades. And I'm very excited for a future with Oscar in Formula 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the kid's showing his class now, and you can just imagine if he'd stayed with that Alpine, where it'd be. He's obviously made the right decision. He's showing his class. Lando's such a high-rated driver now. Everybody's would be saying that Lando would be winning championship after championship in that Red Bull if he was in there and Max wasn't. So the fact that Oscar is, keeping him on his toes like this as a relatively new driver, one of the sort of most recently added to the grid, I think that's absolutely, he's shown his absolute class, and he's a great addition to the grid. I think he's got a great sense of humour as well. He seems really chill. He wasn't bouncing up and down like coming out of Quali or anything. He seemed very chill, very relaxed, happy, but he understands the fact, he's realistic to the fact that there's a long way to go tomorrow, even at Monaco. There's a long way, a lot of things that can go wrong if needs, as it is. So super impressed. Amazing lap, very close to getting pole. He's still on potentially for a win tomorrow. You never know. So. Could be interesting, and his job could be made easier if Science does get the impeding penalty that we've been rumoured around.
Norris being right up behind him? I think I prefer Science up behind me than Norris.
I don't know, because I don't think Norris would want to take his teammate out.
I think you're undervaluing the inter-team dynamics there. I think Norris wants to make sure he's the top dog.
I would agree with you, but at the same time, I don't think he'd risk taking both cars out from second and what would be second and third at the time. I think yeah, I don't think Norris would take that level of. You know, if there's a genuine chance he could get him, then fair play. I think he'll go for it. But you know, yeah. I mean, obviously, like I said, we're still waiting to hear on what's going to happen to Sainz. He was. There is rumours that he could be taking a penalty after blocking Albon. So we'll see what happens there.
I'm just
There was
checking to see if
such
there's been any updates. Doesn't look like there has been any updates so far.
nothing as yet, but yeah, could be really interesting for tomorrow. But again, overriding factor, amazing job by Oscar. Yeah, can't really say better than that. He's been class, and yeah, we hope for a really good result tomorrow. And in those beautiful, can I just say, those absolutely stunning Senna livery that they're running this
I think they should
weekend.
keep it for the whole year
Oh,
because do you know what? I'm going to make a controversial statement here. I'm bored of papaya. I very much prefer the livery they're running currently, and I wish they could run it for the rest of the year. I think it looks much nicer than that papaya. They've not really done much of the papaya for the last few years. It's just been, oh, yep, papaya, we'll put a bit of blue there, or we'll take a bit of blue off, and that's about it. I want something a bit different. This is different. This is what I want all the teams to be doing. Some random stuff like this. Maybe not. Don't all show up with Senna tributes. That would be ridiculous. But you know, I want difference on the grid. I don't want to see the same car year after year after year. Like there's only one team that you kind of expect to see the same car every year, and that's Ferrari. That's been since the beginning of the sport. They've basically almost always been red, apart from 1 year. So like, we've got a team that does that. Fine. Everyone else, change it every year, please. Yeah, honestly, that Sunday livery is beautiful. It's beautiful. Work of art.
it's a stunner. It's a stunner.
But not quite as nice as Bowser's one on F1 23. Go watch our last video if
Oh,
you want to see that. I think that's a slightly nicer.
oh,
But anyway,
you
moving
make
back,
me blush. Oh,
moving back to qualifying and P1, Charles Leclerc, and I couldn't be happier for the boy. I really want him to get this duck off his back and win his home Grand Prix because every year there is heartache for him and something goes wrong. Come on, let this be the year the boy can finally win his bloody home Grand Prix. I like Charles. I think he's a fantastic driver. I'm very intrigued to see him up against Lewis next year. It's going to be very interesting, but he deserves this. He deserves to win his home Grand Prix. Let's see it happen. I want it to happen so much.
yeah, I think with Max not being alongside him, he's got his by far the best chance to do it than the previous. You know, this is his third pole position at Monaco, and it's the hardest track to overtake. So the fact that he hasn't converted one of those two is a little bit of a shocking stat as it is. He will not be wanting to go 3-0, as the Americans would say. So yeah, and without Max being around, I think this is by far his best chance. Don't get me wrong, I think those McLarens are going to push him all the way. Yeah, well,
It all comes down to whether or not Ferrari make a mistake.
yeah,
Stop, and we have a Ricardo Red Bull kind of esque season.
I know what you said. I do. Charles is an insanely good driver and so quick, and obviously is lightning around Monaco as well, which is great. But he's very prone to you know, and yeah, I just really
you cut out. I'm assuming you said he's prone to a crash, but
is his "I am stupid" moment, like he had in Baku.
Yeah. I mean, let's not forget one of these times he qualified on pole. He didn't start the race because he threw it in the wall and destroyed his gearbox. So yeah, he's prone to that.
Yeah. So you know, don't worry. He's an amazing driver. I'm not slating him overly for that. It's been unfortunate, but this is his best chance. And if he if he doesn't win tomorrow, it's going to be an absolute travesty.
I mean, the thing is, like in qualifying, I think you're more likely to hit the wall around here because you're pushing to the absolute limits. After you've got through like the first lap at Monaco, you can take it easy. There's only like a few places anyone can even try to make a move on you, and as long as you cover those off, you can just kind of take it easy the rest of the race. So yeah, he's just got to keep his concentration up, I think, and he'll be okay. If he doesn't seem to have any damage, touch wood, going into the race, this is where they'll find out that the gearbox is buggered and he'll be able to start the race again. But fingers crossed, this is the one where he can do it. I was literally watching qualifying. I was like, I want Leclerc, Piastri, or Albon in this top 10 shootout to get pole. I was like, Albon's not going to happen. And when I saw Piastri and Leclerc going for it, I was like, well, I'm winning one way or the other. So yeah, I can't wait for this. I'm hoping that he can finally convert it and we can all start to lay off him a little bit.
Are you a new Oscar Piastri fan by any chance?
Do you know? I think I just like an Aussie driver, to be honest with you.
Yeah, apparently so.
I used
Yeah.
to not hate Max, not hate Max. Sorry, I used to not hate Mark Webber either. So I think I just like Aussies. Yeah, I disliked Oscar originally because when he went into McLaren, he kicked Daniel out. So,
Yeah.
but the more I see of him, the funnier he gets. Like all his banter with Charles on the lead up to this weekend about him adopting him and stuff.
Yeah, that was so funny.
So I think I
Yeah.
just like Aussie humour.
Dave loves the driver down under. That's the headline right there.
Maybe I should just move to Australia.
Maybe.
But yeah, so that wraps up qualifying for the Monaco Grand Prix. So what we're now going to do, everybody, is we're going to
Very quickly.
go very quickly through Miami and Imola because we've had a few weeks where we haven't been able to do videos. One because Bowser's laptop was broken, and the other one because I had COVID. So hopefully you can forgive us for that. And we're just going to run through these quickly, just that we've talked them with you. So should we start with? Miami would have been the first one of the two. So should we start?
This is the
with
first
Miami?
one. Yeah, we could do Miami. Yep,
So,
absolutely.
I'll let you take the
So-
lead on this one.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, biggest news. I'll go from the top to bottom because obviously you want the biggest news, and everyone probably heard it already. So we'll go from there. Obviously, Lando Norris's first race win of his career. Long awaited. Should have happened years ago if that McLaren was a bit stronger, but now it's firing on all cylinders. He had a class race. Honestly, he had such a great drive and looked so comfortable, so assured. Didn't see him make a single mistake. That was a phenomenal drive, and with Max not really having any, like I say, Max was finished second, and yes, he ran over a sort of post kind of bollard thing that apparently, according to Red Bull, destroyed his floor.
I think he
So-
was nowhere near his floor. I got caught his front wing and went up and over from what I saw.
No, to be fair, the post came out, which they're designed to do when the front wing hit it. There's minimal damage on the front wing, but then the car landed, like the back quarter of the car landed on like the base of the post, which is still like kind of stuck in there. So I think that's probably where they're kind of around just before the diffuser kind of area. So looking at the back of the Venturi tunnels, there could have been some serious damage. I'm not going to take that away from Max and Red Bull there, but they were saying it destroyed the floor, which I don't think it'd be second place if it destroyed the floor. So I think that's kind of a bit of a saving face on that one, but just the fact that Lando and McLaren as a whole, because Oscar looked really good that race as well. That McLaren was firing really well, and Lando, I'm so happy for him. What a great result. He's done so well. And yeah, finally got that good race win, and yeah, absolutely buzzing for him. So, last result.
Very exciting for Lando. There was a part of me that's wondered if he's ever actually going to get that race win after everything that happened at Russia, and he should have had it then. I was like, is it going to be his curse now? So, yeah, he's got that duck off his back, and he can now focus on trying to push McLaren forward to take the fight to Max.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we got to the end of this year and we had like a 3 or 4 way title fight between McLaren and Ferrari or something like that? That'd be insane.
Honestly, it'd be
It's what we
amazing.
dream of.
It is. I will quickly run through the rest of the results though, and then we'll sort of maybe speak on a couple of bits. Verstappen second, like I said, with floor damage. Finishing 7.5 seconds ish behind. So again, showing Norris so controlling of that. You got Leclerc in third, Perez only down in fourth. It's kind of average weekend for him. Sainz finishing fifth, with Hamilton having one of his better races, finishing sixth to be honest. Tsunoda with a very impressive 7th place for V-Carb. Russell in 8th, Alonso 9th, and Ocon in 10th. You had Hulkenberg, the first of the Hasses. There was a big thing, especially in the sprint race, with sort of Magnussen holding up Hamilton to try and again get some extra places for Hulkenberg, but getting a lot of penalty points in the meantime, which has put him right on teetering on the edge. So keep an eye on that for the rest of the season. Moving forward, because he could potentially get a race ban. But I don't think Haas care, because realistically they know they've got Ollie Behrman on the side who will do them a solid job if he gets in that seat. So I don't think they really care that much. They're quite happy what Mag's been doing. You've got Gasly in 12th, Piastri, who had damage and had to pit quite close to the end, so it's kind of an unrealistic 13th place because he was right up there as well until the sort of last quarter of the race, and again having an amazing weekend and got the fastest lap as well. So that's a bit out of place, out of kilter for Piastri. He was doing a lot better than 13th would suggest. Zhou probably having one of his best weekends of the year in 14th. Ricardo not fantastic in 15th compared to obviously Tsunoda being in 7th. Bottas in 16th. Stroll having standardly in 17th. Albon, I just don't think it suited the Williams. So Albon in 18th, and K-Mag after having a crash with Sargent 19th, and obviously Sargent, who didn't finish the race, coming bottom of the pack on that one.
Just getting some breaking news, by the way, in regards to the Monaco Grand Prix. Apparently multiple drivers have been called to the stewards' room, not just Carlos Sainz, but also Nico Hulkenberg and Esteban Ocon as well. So potential for a few penalties to go on. So everything we've told you earlier might completely change by the end of play today. Such is Formula One nowadays. But anyway, sorry, just want to continue where you were going, but that's all right.
No, like I said, that was Miami covered. The kind of, any other points on that?
No, strong weekend in the beginning for Ricardo, I suppose, with his sprint race. He had a good sprint result, and then had an absolute mare when it came to qualifying for the race. And yeah, I mean, the sprint he finished 4th, which, if it was normal points, that would have been the most amount of points Ricardo had gotten all year, but it's not. It's reduced points, so he only got 5. But yeah, and then he didn't qualify well for the main race, and he just couldn't make up the places in the race pace, struggling with following the cars. But other than that, I think we covered pretty much everything else with what you already said. Yeah, great weekend for Norris and McLaren. Yeah, I think this is going to spur McLaren on for the rest of the year, which is what we need. We want someone to take the fight to Red Bull. Let it be McLaren if it has to be. I was hoping it was going to be Ferrari and McLaren, but we shall see.
Well, you see where the top 4 drivers for this weekend is, so you never know. This could be the start of the proper 3-team 6-driver battle moving forward for the rest of the season. But yeah, that's Miami very briefly covered. Obviously, feel free to put anything in the comments that you'd like to add to that. But we will move swiftly on, because we're running out of time, to the Emilia-Romagna race of Imola.
Yes, absolutely, and once again dominated by Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Sorry, but again, Lando Norris right back up there in P2. So as I said, McLaren seem to have been spurred on a bit. Charles there in P3 as well. This is what I want to see every week. I want to see these names, these 3, just duking it out. Piastri there as well in 4th, and Sainz in 5th. I would absolutely love it if we could have these guys all duke it out for the rest of the season. But Sainz was and Leclerc were quite far off of those. Not Leclerc, sorry, Sainz and Piastri were quite far off of the other 3. So yeah, but much more of the same. Max Verstappen dominating the race. Norris was catching him towards the end. Max's tyres, I think, were starting to struggle, so Norris had been looking after his a bit more, did a big push. Everyone was getting excited, but just ran out of laps. I think if you'd given it another 2 laps, Lando probably would have had him. But yeah, unfortunately, not enough laps for Lando there. So he's still only a 1-time race winner currently. Bit of a mare again for Sergio Perez in 8th place. We don't need to keep talking about this. We've said it many times. He's not where he needs to be. The reason Norris is able to close on Max so much in the last few laps is because Max hasn't got a rear gunner that he should have. So anyway, enough said there. Yeah, as you mentioned, Stroll again outperforming Alonso. So bad weekend for Alonso after bad weekend at the moment. So let's see if he can break the rut tomorrow, or at least in Canada. Another poor weekend for Daniel at VCARB, but Yuki Tsunoda getting some points again. Hulkenberg and Magnussen just outside of the top 10, and the 2 Mercs in there. What seems to be almost regular finishing positions of about 6th, 7th at the moment. So yeah, not really much more to say about that that I can think of, really.
Yeah, like I say, it was very teasing at the end, wasn't it? With Norris catching Verstappen at some points a second a lap. I think it was a great drive from Norris again. Really, like I said, for first time where Max has been quite a chunk ahead. That's the first time I've really seen him reeled in that way. At one point the gap was up to about, I think it was 13 seconds at one point.
Yeah.
It managed to pull it all the way back to 7/10 as they crossed the line. He just got DRS at that point, so he only had one lap of it. And obviously that Red Bull's so good in a straight line, so that was always going to be a challenge. But like you say, I think another couple of laps he would have got him. But yeah, you got everything else you pretty much covered. Perez covered that plenty of times before. The other, like I said, Alonso, he did have damage on the floor from Quali, which does kind of maybe explain a little bit. But again, it was a shocking weekend all around for Alonso, that one. So I'm not going to try and defend him too much on that one. But yeah, Albon, unfortunately, the only DNF of that race. Alonso's finishing 19th. Sargent in 17th, which is one of his better performances. Bit sad that that's one of his better performances, but thought I'd better mention it. Everything else other than that, Ricardo 13th. It's another one that we tend to bring up a little bit, but it's being outperformed by Tsunoda, getting a point for VCARB as well. But Tsunoda in 10th, being a lap down. So only 9 drivers managed to finish the final lap. But another good race, and I love the Imola track. It doesn't always offer. There's only really one overtaking point, realistically, unless you're absolutely damn daring it somewhere. But I love the track. It's gorgeous. It's nice.
Track. The cars are just too wide nowadays.
Partly the issue as well.
I think it's a very similar thing to Monaco, where it's a great track, but it's just not suitable for modern day Formula One necessarily. Unless they change the cars, in my opinion.
Which they are in 2026 again, smaller. Yeah, 2026. Yeah, so fingers crossed.
With the cars as they are at the moment, I think there are better tracks out there like Malaysia, like Istanbul, that we could be racing at instead of Imola. I know Imola has a bit for people's hearts, but I'd much rather have interesting racing than heritage at this point. Going back to Monaco Grand Prix, I don't know if you saw it, Lewis Hamilton at the beginning of the weekend said that he feels like they should be doing something different for Monaco. Not necessarily the sprint format, but a different format. He suggested in that tyres that go off quicker to force more pit stops to try and make it a bit more interesting. It could be potentially one option there. I think one of the things that they should definitely look at for Monaco, though, is qualifying. I think Monaco Grand Prix should have a different qualifying format to every other race. I think
too busy with 20 cars on the track.
I think we should be going back to the classic, one at a time, 3 laps qualifying, but I think it should be randomised. I don't feel like it should be in championship order or reverse championship order. It should be completely randomised. Literally, the drivers are sat in the pit and they don't know when they're going to go out. They go out, they do 3 laps, that's their lap time. I think that's what it should be. It'll be different. It'll be an event then. Bit like the Indy 500 is for the Indy. It's done slightly differently. So I think it could be something to look at if they want to keep Monaco on the calendar. I don't think that the current way it looks at the moment, people really want to tune into Sunday on a Monaco Grand Prix, because you just sit there like, okay, it's a parade effectively, isn't it, most times, unless there's a crash or unless there's some terrible weather. Like, it's normally just parade. So I do agree with Lewis on that. I think they need to do something. Maybe a combination of the two would be the ideal thing. Change something up in Quali and change something up with the tyres. Have a special tyre just for Monaco that causes like 4 or 5 pit stops or something. And then we have a completely different race to what we get nowadays. But yeah, I think they need to do something. I was saying to our personal group chat, maybe they need to open up some of the corners that have got like fake chicanes and things, just to allow for it. They need to do something.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, I think inherently it's all down to the fact that the cars got so big now. But Monaco was always tricky anyway. Even when the cars were at their very smallest in the 60s and 50s, 60s, whatever. So yeah, it's massive. The car's massive now compared. So there's always, you just can't run side by side. You need basically the only chance of ever overtaking is if a car makes a mistake in front and even then, most of them can defend down to the next corner anyway. So yeah, it's something that needs to be done. I like your ideas. I think that could be the best solution until the cars are made smaller. And like I said, even 2026, yes, okay, the cars are being made smaller, but not dramatically enough to make that much of a difference at Monaco. So I think it's more of a case of I'd like to see something different for Monaco. Like I said, it's one of those things. There's so much heritage to it that you don't you want to lose it off the calendar in the sense of like the racing quality on a Sunday, but you don't want to lose it because it is such a special event and so much, in the heart of F1. So okay, you don't want to lose it.
Grand Prix, I think, isn't it, or something like
that? Yeah, exactly. Behind Monza and I guess Silverstone, possibly,
Silverstone, yeah.
Maybe something like that. But yeah, so we shall see in the future. But yeah, FIA sort it out.
Absolutely. But I think that's it for now. I don't think we've got any further updates on the Carlos Sainz. I'm just going to do a quick Google in case there is. Let's have a look. Carlos Sainz news. No, nothing further yet. So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure that something will come out about Carlos and also about Nico Hulkenberg Ocon as well. So probably going to be a few changes to the grid for net tomorrow, which we shall see. It'll be interesting to see how that affects things. But yes, for now, thank you very much for tuning in to watch us. We race on Thursday nights on Twitch, so come and check us out. You can find our pages in the bio, and we will see you soon. We will definitely make sure to do a video for the Grand Prix before the next one this time.
We promise.